Yo, my bad. Once again, this is the Brown Experience with Brown96, and every single time I go live on this Instagram thing, has something has to happen. Yo, it is what it is. Anyway, so today on the Brown Experience, we're gonna be talking about assimilated tongue versus native tongue, and how that affects us, how it affects us, in what ways. Um, yeah. So to everyone, coming back on the live, gracias. You know, something always goes down. Like, something always going down with this Instagram shit. But it is what it is. Just run with it. Go with it. You know what I mean? Anyway, what's up, Radical? For everyone joining in, assimilated tongue versus native tongue. You know, hopefully this time it works. There we go. What's up, brother?
Whoa, what's going on? I think I'm a little weird right now. Give me 1 minute. Let me try to see that. Let me see if I can fix it. Give me 1 minute.
Oh,
Give me 1 minute.
good, brother. Man, something always happens with this fucking YouTube. I mean, this Instagram thing, man. Yo, what's up? What's
I,
up to the people joining in? What's happening? Happy Thursday. Let's get this cracking. Assimilated tongue versus native tongue. How that affects us brown people, us gente, indigenous gente from this indigenous land, California and Arizona, and people all over the nation that share this way of living, our gente. Pero yeah, man, hey,
all right, all right. I think I got it. I think I got it. I
that's what's
think
up, man.
I think I got it. I think I got it.
That's
Yo,
what's
what's
up,
going
man.
on, bro?
No, man, hey, thank you for joining in, man. This is a big. Uh, is my volume pretty loud, or is it all right? What do you think?
No, you get. I got you on my thing.
It's
You
good.
good?
All right, cool, cool, cool. Yeah, man, this is a heavy talk right here because there is a lot of this going on where
Yeah,
someone like, there's even labels that they say like the no cepo people, you know what I mean?
yeah,
The
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
people that are like, labeled pochos or labeled indios because, this and that and the third. But I mean, let's start it off, bro. Let's kick it off with what is the point of language, bro, in general, in your eyes?
Hold on. Let me get myself. I'm so sorry. Let me get myself situated because I'm all over the place and all
All good,
that.
brother. All good.
Yeah, my
Yo,
bad,
to
my bad, my
everyone
bad.
joining in, man. If anyone that is interested in this topic,
Yeah,
shoot them this share the live and let them know that anyone is welcome to join in and
yeah,
talk about it. Right?
yeah. It's open discussion. Let's
Open discussion. Yep.
let's have
Yep.
it. Yeah, yeah,
What's
yeah,
up?
yeah.
What's
So,
Sports and Tunes? What's up, Hypnotic? If anyone that is interested in this topic, we're talking about assimilated tongue versus native tongue. For our people, like for just a little brief on that, on what that means, what I'm trying to
yeah.
get at. So it's like people that don't speak Spanish, the
Uh
quote
huh.
unquote pocho, and for the people that don't and have like broken English, you know what I mean, and vice
Yeah,
versa. They
yeah,
they look down upon each other and whatnot. But yeah, like I was saying, man, what is the point of language in general, bro, in
yeah.
your eyes?
Well, language is very important. It's something that we as people use to communicate. We as people use to express ourselves. We as people use language, and sometimes it's written, sometimes it's expressive, as a way for connection. You know, the thing is, when other people, other entities come into the mix and say that that language is wrong, or you should start speaking this type of language, that's when it comes as oppressive. You know what I mean? That's when it starts becoming somewhat of a suppressive type of entity at that point. Because let's be honest, as Latinos, right, we had many different indigenous languages. Mexicans had, I think, the Aztec language, whichever that was. Also, Central Americans had their own type of language, and South American, as Incas or whatever, had their own type of language, which was Quechua too. Tainos, from the Caribbean, had their own type of language. What binds all of us together is that we got colonized. We got colonized by the Spanish. It's not a coincidence that in Mexico they speak Spanish and they speak the same Spanish all the way down everywhere they conquered. You feel what I'm saying? The dialect might be different. You know, in the Dominican Republic, we'd be like, "Okay," and then in Mexico, they like they're like, pinche way, all this other stuff. You know what I'm saying? So the dialect might be different. The certain styles might be different, but it's still all the same. And when it comes to that, it's very important trying to at least have that sort of connection back up again, having that sort of information back, because once you lost that, you kind of lost part of your identity, the part of the person who you are. Now you're lost. Now you're open into anybody telling you who you are. Now you're walking around thinking you're Latinx. Now you're walking around saying that you got 5, 6, 7 different pronouns. You know what I'm saying? So that's once you lost with only that, not only language, but with culture, with religion, with certain communal customs that we do. Once you lost all of that, that's when you are open to anything else. You're open to other entities coming in and telling you who you are, telling you who you're supposed to be. It's not a coincidence that you know the LGBT community or whoever just came in and started saying that we're now Latinx. It's not a coincidence. You know what I mean? Because as Latinos, first of all, Latinos is not a race. Hispanic is not a race. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to my Mexican people, because at least they try to make themselves a race, calling yourselves. I think was it Chicanos. You know, calling yourselves Chicanos. At least that was a start. But the whole Latin community didn't adopt that, and that's something that we should start adopting, because once they tell us, because we're so fractured, we don't know who we are. You know what I'm saying? One of us call ourselves Spanish, the other one calls ourselves Hispanic, and all of that other stuff. Once we have a language that connects us, we'll have an identity that connects us. And Latinx wouldn't be something that just comes out of nowhere and tells us this is who you are and this is how you're supposed to be.
Ah, for sure, bro. You said a whole lot right there, bro. That's a whole lot.
Yeah, yeah. My
Yeah,
fault,
I
my
mean,
bad.
and that no, that's all good, bro. Because like you just put a lot on the table, and all these different like they're like separate compartments of all that unites what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so like for an example, you mentioned the different languages that our ancestors spoke, right? Oh shit, what happened? He'll come back in. But like I was saying, he mentioned like different languages. Like I just recently found out that since you know, my parents and their parents came from Jalisco, that I would be speaking Huichol, which is our native would be my native tongue. So if anything, you know, like I mentioned to the homegirl Yvette before, uh, that I'd probably be like eventually getting into that, because that's what all this research that I've been doing is kind of pushing me towards more of a source of where I come from. And I think that's probably like where everyone usually ends up, because someone that's looking for an answer, goes back and more and more back until finally they get to a certain source. And I think regarding language, our source is like the indigenous language, right? And before that, like what comes before indigenous language? You know what I mean? Like who knows? What caveman type of shit? Like what is it? Like, you know what I mean? But so far that we trace back is our native language, right? And that's what we're talking about. And yeah, man. So like, why is language viewed as such a like who's better than not? Like why is yours superior more than mine, and things of that. So why do you think that is, bro?
I think certain individuals in the Latin community, which we have to start acknowledging, certain individuals in the Latin community want to police who knows better Spanish. You know what I mean? Who speaks the more proper Spanish, which makes no sense. That's one. It's extremely idiotic, you know. And number three, at the end of the day, we're arguing who speaks the colonizer's language. How about we start learning our own native language from our own people? You know what I'm saying? What was this called back then, or how, what were the certain practices done back then? There's a lot of infighting and tribalism in the Latin community that a lot of people might not know or don't like to talk about. For example, tias and abuelitas be like, oh, who's lighter, who's darker? You know what I'm saying? They like to do stuff like that. They like to we like to again say the same thing about superiority, who knows Spanish a lot better than somebody else, or who looks more Latino than somebody else. You know what I'm saying? So it's idiotic, but the whole policing of language, it just basically goes to insecurity. So whoever's gonna go start policing that I speak better Spanish than you, or you have an accent because I am actually native from here and all this other stuff, all of that is idioticness. Because let's be honest, I was born I was born here, and first generation Latinos who are born in the United States, when they go back home, friends, family, cousins, and everybody calls us what? Gringos, right? They call us gringos, and they call Americans and all that other stuff. Even though we know it's not an insult whatsoever, but they use that as a little bit of a dig, saying you're part of us, but you're not really like in here, which we understand. But again, it's done as a is done as tribalism again amongst our own, which makes no type of sense, because at the end of the day, we're fighting for the same things. You know what I'm saying? We're struggling in the same way. At the end of the day, that white boy doesn't really care if I was born here or there. He's gonna still see me as, as an immigrant. He's still gonna see me as a Mexican, even though I'm not. He's still gonna see me as a Mexican. He's still going to treat me as a non-white individual. And once we
Yeah.
start getting into that, and stop with the little bullying and name calling and all this other stuff, once we start getting into that, that's when I think a little bit more progress is going to be done. Because to be honest with you, I do feel like the Latino community is very fractured, very fractured. And I feel that due to that fracturing, that a lot of disdain is happening in our community that we should start putting a stop to, you know?
Mm. Now, there's a lot of gente that are pro, advocacy for indigenous rights
Yeah.
and things of that sort. But a lot of gente that are kind of following that group, I've spoken to a lot, like, going back and forth with certain people, DMs and, actually phone calls and things like that. And a lot of them only speak a sprinkle of words here and there of that what they're learning of their native language, right? And they would say certain things like, "Well, I'm not going to speak Spanish because that's the colonizer's language, right?" But then go ahead and like not be able to. First of all, they won't speak the Spanish because they don't know that much of it. So how would that how would you be able to communicate with like family members and things of that sort in your community if you can't even speak what we have now as as cultural language, right? Now for that, like, what do you think about that type of stuff where someone's looking
Um,
down on others because of that?
yeah, I understand. When we come as a people, as Latinos, when we're coming into this enlightenment, when we're coming into this phase of knowledge, when we're coming into this phase of actually getting your third eye open, as much as that's kind of cheesy, but once we start getting into that, we have to understand that we shouldn't be trying to emulate the same people we're going against. We shouldn't try to emulate the same practices that were put upon us and our people, and going against those our own people. Talking about, oh, you can't speak this or whatever the case is. It's okay if you don't want to speak the language or whatever the case is. But I think I don't agree with that because I think a certain level of communication needs to be done. A certain level of connection needs to be done. For example, um, I remember I was in the city somewhere taking care of some business, and I needed some directions, and nobody was trying to help me out. I saw this janitor dude, Mexican guy, and the first thing I was like, "Amigo, cómo está?" And then he just looked at me, and he was like, "Hermano, cómo estamos?" That's it. From then on, he yo, mira, tú tienes que irte aquí, acá, acá, acá. That's it, right? You know what I'm saying? That I think that common language and common connection should be done, should be practiced. And I understand not wanting that roots because within that language there is a root of where did it come from, how it started. I understand that. So what we should be also doing is learning our indigenous language in the same time. That's all it is. Just not shaming others for speaking the colonizer language, because at the end of the day, everybody's not in the same level. Everybody is not going to be in the same level of consciousness. Everybody's not going to be in the same level with you. There's going to be definitely different differences even within family, and that's okay. But at least having somewhat of a connection, having somewhat of a bond with language, even if it's a colonizer language, I think it's a little important because at the end of the day, how are you going to communicate your stance? How are you going to communicate your side of your debate if you can't even articulate it? You know what I mean? And when you're going to keep on flipping from Spanish to English, English to Spanish, people are going to get confused. you know?
That's true, bro. And that's the
Yeah,
thing that kind of like there's a barrier of like, you know what I mean, in between people that the first thing, how are you gonna get a point across if you can't even communicate?
yeah,
Like, you know what I mean? So like first let's establish that. Let's at
yeah.
least look at that, you know what I mean? Let's first look at how are we gonna get anything done if we can't even communicate? You
Yeah,
know what I mean? So
yeah.
because first
That's what I'm saying.
once
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, once that barrier's down, then okay, let's look at what is more, what is better as a whole for us, right?
yeah.
What is better as a whole?
But
Once we get that,
and the thing is that we have to understand, we won't save everybody. We
hmm,
won't save everybody. Everybody is not going to be here to listen to whatever conscious woke stuff you got or anything that you learned from your past or whatever. No, everybody's not going to be receptive, and that's okay. That's totally fine. The thing is, everybody has a different journey. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's like for you, it took you a certain journey to get to where you're at. It took me a certain journey to get to where I'm at, and my knowledge and my wisdom base. So at the end of the day, we all shouldn't be like trying to be como how you say como fuerte con el palo. Ahí,
oh,
you gotta learn that. You know what I mean? Like we gotta relax. Sometimes it's all right. We're not gonna save everybody.
yeah. And a lot of us are very, very hard-headed, bro. A lot of us
Yeah,
are very
yeah,
persistent in our ways, are very
yeah. I,
testarudo, como le
I
dicen
I think
testarudo, like,
I think that's a Latino thing though. We're very hard
yeah,
headed people, bro.
yeah,
We're very hard headed people. We don't like to listen to whoever, whatever the case. But
yeah,
that's funny.
and very prideful, you know what I mean? So that's another
Yeah,
thing. Our
yeah,
people are very territorial and prideful.
yeah,
So once we make up our minds on something, like there's
yeah,
no changing that sometimes, bro. But like
yeah.
on that same straw, bro, like being Latino, and let's refer to us as Latino just for the time being, just so we can have that
Of course. Just so
understanding. Because I know
understanding.
there's
Yeah.
so many like different branches of how people describe it, but is one that doesn't speak at least Spanish not considered Latino? I mean, should anyone have the right of saying like you don't speak Spanish, so that means you don't care for our
No,
culture?
no. That's completely idiotic. That's stupid. No, because if we want to really take it there, the main people who invented Spanish should be like, well, you don't speak the proper Spanish anyway, so get out of it. You're not. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's completely idiotic. Again, it goes to tribalism. Latinos were, like you said, we're very prideful people. we don't like when other people from outside of our community talks about us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We be like, wait, you're not Mexican, you're not Venezuelan, you don't know what it means to this and this and this because this hasn't been, you know what I'm saying? So I totally understand that. The thing is, the tribalism, it's stupid. Again, just because individuals, like for example, this is a huge thing for Puerto Ricans. Puerto Ricans beef with other Puerto Ricans that were born in the United States. They call them New Yorkers and say that
Mm.
they're not real Puerto Ricans because they were born in United States. Even though Puerto Rico is it's a commonwealth, meaning they're both Americans. But
Yeah.
depending on who was born in what place, they no, you're not Puerto Rican because you wasn't born here and stuff like that, and because they don't have the accent. All of this is stupid. All of this is just done to divide. At the end of the day, the people who control it is going to see both of them people fighting and be like, "What are these spics fighting about?" That's what that's what they're gonna say. I'm sorry to say it. I'm sorry to be so rough, but at the end of the day, that's what they're gonna say. They're gonna be like,
Yeah.
okay, get these two little brown monkeys and get them the fuck up out of here. That's what they're gonna say. At
Yeah.
the end of the day, and I'm not trying to say that we should be looking everything through the eyes of white people, but we have to be very real about the system that we live in, and we have to be very real on the condition that we live in. Latinos are doing a good part of making money, having businesses, but at the end of the day, it's not changing our community. There's still brown and brown crime. There's still fatherless homes. There's still little girl like women getting pregnant out of wedlock. So some of the traditions have been gone, and because of that, we have to understand that we're not in such a great position as we thought we are. You feel me? So having these little beefs about who speaks better Spanish or whatever the case is, and you're not really Latino because you don't say the R right and you can't roll your tongue right is stupid. It's dumb. It's completely idiotic. And I,
Yeah.
and I don't and I don't think we should be having that because it's gonna lower our vibration. It's gonna lower our collective. And there's other problems. There's other problems that we need to deal with. You know what I'm saying? In the Latino community, there's a lot of problems that we need to deal with in the Latino community. For example, how are we going to help out our people after they come here, they cross the border? How are we going to help them economically? You know what I'm saying? How are we going to help them put food on the table? How are we gonna help them? Getting a roof over their head. How are we gonna help them doing everything? You know what I'm saying? So there's other issues in our community that we should be focusing on more than fulano de tal can't speak Spanish the right way because he doesn't go when he goes. You know what I'm saying? It's stupid. It's completely idiotic, but it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah, you know what? And that slang, that's another element to it
Yeah,
too. That you're not authentic if you don't have that slang. If you don't say
yeah,
and push in certain words in your sentences and
yeah.
in certain ways of like, speaking the language. But as we go into like, representatives of our people or our at least our immediate area, like, people that are running for I don't know, city supervisor or whatever it is, right? Uh, now, should a person that's running to represent us be have to speak Spanish in order to comply with helping us as a population within that town, within that region that they're trying to run for? What do you think?
No, I don't think so. First of all, in New York, Mayor Giuliani couldn't even speak Spanish, so he was all over the place. You feel me? So,
Yo,
and he was still yo, what's
what's
going
up,
on?
y'all?
He was still the mayor, right? I don't think speaking Spanish should be a requirement. What are you gonna do for the people? That should be a requirement. There's Latinos again are going through a lot. Miseducation. You feel me? Some Latinos aren't reading at grade level. They aren't going through math at grade level. So fix that first. You feel me? There's a lot of Latino households out here that live check by check by check by check, and they go around borrowing money just because they can't make it through a week or two. Speak about that. I could care less if you don't even speak Spanish. I really don't care as long as you're helping the people out.
Yeah, because I remember like that came about. That question came about because I remember back when I was smaller, there was like Mexican Americans, Chicanos that were trying to run for certain things in their particular area. And I remember my folks and other people would say, no, pero ese pocho que vas a ver, like, ese pocho que vas a ver de nosotros, like, ni puede
Yeah,
hablar con nosotros bien, no puede hablar con nosotros, no puede
yeah,
comunicar, ¿qué va a hacer con nosotros? So it's
yeah,
like, it's kind of like going back to like that, I don't believe you because you don't speak like me. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I don't believe you can help people that look like me when you can't even speak what I speak
yeah,
type shit. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's kind of where that language came
yeah,
from.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, you want to add something to that, Royal? What you think about that, bro?
Yo, shout out to the live. Hope everybody's
Okay.
having a good day. Yeah, shout out to the host, Brown Six. I just tuned in a little just recently. What were you
Oh
what were
yeah,
you going over
yeah,
just now
language,
again?
bro. Like language
I
barriers.
heard
Like
some
some,
of it.
like some people, some of us don't know how to speak Spanish. Or some of us speak broken English. So like one or the other clowns on each other, right? Or looks down upon each other,
Yeah,
because of it.
yeah.
Like, and right now, I was talking about the fact that, you know, when it comes down to like running for something in our towns, um, does the person running as a representative for our people have to speak Spanish because a large majority of us only speak Spanish, right? And I mean, what do you think about that, bro?
Well, I was raised speaking English, but my parents they always spoke Spanish around me, so I kind of just picked up just by hearing them speak Spanish, and I also took several Spanish classes in high school, which definitely helped my vocabulary and able to speak Spanish. But so yo puedo sí puedo hablar español, pero yo entiendo más de que yo puedo hablar. But yeah, so that I mean to me, to be honest, I don't think it makes a difference because the reason I say that is because we all have this, we're all brown. I mean that's like saying, you know what I'm saying? Like I don't really want to use any other examples, but yeah, it's just that's as simple as I can put it. It's like we're all brown, so where are we tripping off that for? You know?
Can I ask a
Yeah,
homie can I ask a homie a question?
go ahead.
Um, what's up, bro? What's going on? So when you were learning Spanish, did you find other Latinos like poking fun at you or whatever the case is because you were learning Spanish?
Growing up, yeah, here and there,
But
here and there you would,
my
but
reason
yeah,
to ask that is because as Latinos we shouldn't be doing stuff like that. We're still Latino at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? We still go through the same struggles. So why in your mind why
yeah.
do you think they were poking fun at you because you didn't know Spanish?
Well, like I was light complected growing up too, man. So like, that was like a reason too for a lot of the hate. But I mean, I, I would just say, it's just that they're used to a certain group hanging around with, a lot of that kind of certain individuals, and then seeing somebody such as myself that light skinned complected that, yeah, I understood it. I didn't understand everything, but a majority, and then yeah, I mean, it's like anything else, man. Everybody picks and chooses what they want to hate on, and it's just crazy because there's so much negativity out here. Like for me, what I focus on is myself and my family, but there's a lot of people that they'll go out of their way to try and like find any little thing to hate on you, and they just keep on with it. But yeah, unfortunately, that's the way the world is. And people, they would rather see negativity and drama than positivity and unity.
That's a fact. Yeah, that's a fact.
Yeah, man. And with that, you know what I mean? Like, how could people in Brazil be labeled as Latino and still not have to fall under that umbrella of having to speak Spanish, right? Their main language out there is Portuguese. So it's like,
Well, Portuguese Portugal is inside of Spain.
yeah,
They kind of share the similarities of culture and language, if you want to really take it there. When the Spanish, historically speaking, when the Spanish did the invasion, the Portugal was right behind them. You know, let's be completely honest. They weren't innocent of this whole thing. But the thing is that Portugal had a big influence in Brazil due to the fact that the majority of slaves did go to Brazil because it's a vast land, and they had a lot of work. They had a lot of work there, rice, sugar cane, and all this other stuff. So it became a huge factory. And the Portugal had a very stronghold there. The French wanted to come in, but the Spanish and Portugal said no or whatever. So I believe the label Latino, and this is the reason why I don't like using it, but we're going to use it just so we can understand each other. The label Latino technically is for French, Italian, Portuguese, and Spanish, and for Spain. And the reason why Brazilians are considered Latino is because, the Latino label goes under that umbrella of Spain, Portugal, France, and Italy. Now, if you say Latino to any American out here, they're not going to think French. They're not going to think Italy. No, they're going to think either Mexican or somebody brown. That's all they're going to think about. So even though that word evolved throughout time, I still don't like using it because it's not something that we gave ourselves. You know what I'm saying? That's not a name that we gave ourselves. That's not a name that we came up with, sat down and said, okay, hermano, hermana, dama y caballero, vamos a hablar, and let's talk and let's find out what we're going to be called. You feel me? That's something that we didn't come up with. So that's the reason why I don't like the whole Latino, Hispanic type of thing. You know what I'm saying? But I'll use it for conversation, though.
Yeah. Now, let's go more deeper in the roots of language itself. Like, who's to say that we can't come up with a new language right as of right now? Like, language that we had, like Spanish, right? It took long and it formed with different type of other languages that made up Spanish, like like Latin. That's where kind of it originated, right? The Latin language.
Yeah, it
But
came from
what's what's
from
up?
Spain.
What's that, Carmen? But like as of right now, how much of a possibility do you guys think that we can actually bond together to make a new language now that could bring about more of unity within our people? Like, do you think that should be a solution to? I mean, because look, we have what bond us together as of right now, which is Spanish, right? But because it is a colonizer's language, we won't necessarily glue to that. We don't want to glue to that because we want to let that go because that's not that there's a lot of bloodshed because of it, right? But why, since that happened, why couldn't we bring a new language to begin with? Like, let go of the old and let's start anew as a people, right? How much of that is actually reality in your guys' eyes? Whoever wants to go first.
Well, I think personally, like it's gonna take a while because Latinos, like you said, we need to stop that tribalism within ourselves first. Once we stop that, I think that getting together and uniting together will be a possibility because let's be honest, even though we're all Latinos here in America, we separate ourselves due to geographical location. Oh, I can't be good with you because Mexicans do this and this and this, and I'm Puerto Rican. You know what I mean? So even though we're Latinos, we share the same struggle, have the same language. We separate ourselves. This is something that the white man doesn't do. We do to ourselves. This is something that we need to stop, and that tribalism needs to stop first. Once we stop that first, I think enlightenment will come in and we'll start doing something that's going to be beneficial for the group collectively. Until that, we have a lot of issues that we gotta resolve first before that even happens.
That's hard to do. You know why? Because like it's almost kind of like a internal, like more of a trauma, like a
Yeah,
historical trauma
yeah.
that just is gonna always haunt us. Like, how can we let go of something that affected a whole, like a whole 180
Well,
fucking thing to our
ther-
people? Like,
therapy,
But you know
therapy.
who started first?
Therapy works because again, we separate ourselves for skin color, language, geographical location. I hear Mexicans. I don't like Hondurans. Why? Because there are more Hondurans here than Mexicans. Stupid shit. You know what I mean? So we separate ourselves by us doing us. No white man is doing that. No black man is telling us, "Yo, y'all lighter than each other." Nobody's doing that. We do it to ourselves. So once we stop doing that, that little trauma, like you said, once we stop doing that, I think by having conversations like this, people coming together and having conversations like this is how I think. I don't know. I could be wrong, but anybody could go ahead.
yeah. I just want to hear different points of views with this.
Yeah,
Like
of course.
it's okay to agree on it, but like I want some disagreements that way we can understand why it is that we can't progress and be able to see things eye to eye as a whole. Like, yeah, like I do understand this whole barrier with Spanish and the reason why a lot of us don't choose to adapt into that because it is a colonizer language, but then we are not able to communicate with those that are around us as we speak. Like, and if we can't do that, then what's the point of any progress if we can't progress with the people that we're immediately around?
Yeah.
But for a ver, question de carnal Jose, as we were speaking earlier, like I don't know what you caught of it, but let me ask you this. Now as color, when we introduce color, like we were just talking about the fact that we are, tribal and things of that sort. But like now, when we focus in on color within our people, like the fact that some of us are lighter, darker, and that adds another formula for destruction when it comes to like not wanting to become
You
something
know
or
who started?
assimilate.
Yeah. You know who
Oh,
started that first? The Españoles and the Aztecs. So we were on the Españoles and the Aztecs, and then they came the Mexicans. You know,
yeah,
well, los Españoles got to Mexico where the Aztecs were. They were fighting. That's where they came. You know, that's where they came Mexicans. So everybody who was born around that era knew about Mexicans. De ahí creció los mexicanos, you know,
yeah,
puros Latinos,
yeah.
you know, because Aztecs have different language. Español es puro español. So
I remember.
like Puerto Ricans, Mexicans, you know, all of that, it was together, you know,
Now, I
one city to
remember
another.
when a friend of mine told me like that you need to speak and enunciate in Spanish and roll your R's and things of that sort because if not, then tú no eres mero mero mexicano, right?
Uh,
And that's the type of brainwash that this whole like just in every region is different, right? Because every region has their, what I mean, like has their way of speaking, their slang or whatnot. But like authentic, what is authentic? Like it's I guess based on individual perspective, right? I guess because like everyone seems to have a different opinion of what is authentic when it comes to
Someone just
the
butchering
language.
fucking names, bro, on here, bro. I don't know who that is, you know.
Hey yo, just to double back, speaking on the comment, that was meant to had somebody put in the comments, Denise Gonzalez. We have different dialects, culture, heritage, and even different races, folks. We aren't all the same, and that's okay. I still rock with other Latinos, but we aren't the same. Your opinion on that, Brown Six?
Well, yeah, I mean that's the beautiful part of it, but the messed up part is that the looking down upon each other. That's what's got me talking about this topic altogether, because the superiority in it, like, the if you're lighter skinned, and you're closer to, some say you're closer to our colonizers because you're lighter like they were, you know what I mean? So you have a right to speak that Spanish language. Or if you're darker, and that's the fucked up part, that what I noticed is like the people that are like, more looking like the indigenous, have that mentality of like, if you don't speak that Spanish, you ain't authentic. Like, because is that ideology of like, if you're darker, that means you're more descendant of our ancestors because they were darker, right?
Yeah.
So like, that shows some kind of authenticity, right? But what what really is, like I was asking, like, what really is authentic at this point? Is there really any type of authentic person when it comes to like a Mexicano, or whatever that falls under the umbrella of our people? Because by this point, we're pretty much like, what I mean, like, we're so mixed in different flavors that what is authentic?
So, real quick, Yvette in the comments said authentic is what reflects natural law. As indigenous people, we are a reflection of the land we come from. That's in our authenticity as communities and peoples. She said that's not true either, hermano. I don't know who you have been talking to, but that's not true. Denise said, I'm darker and living among mostly Mexican and Central Americans, and they strip me of my Latin card all the time, which is funny because I know they don't know that Caribbean Latinos are African too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a thing. That does happen.
Now, to close off this group right here, I'm gonna ask, if all of you can go like one at a time, and answer like, what will progress our ideology of what is correct for our people as a language. Whoever wants to go
Language.
first.
I gotta think about that. Yeah.
In my opinion, as long as you're brown and proud, you're Mexican. I don't care what anybody says, man. It's all this different stuff that everybody has their different views. That's just my opinion, you know, and that's the way I see things.
Wanna go
No, that's
next?
a nice.
Jose?
That's a nice shirt, brown and proud. That would be a
Yeah.
nice
Yeah.
shirt.
Yeah.
Let
Wanna
me
go?
think about mine. Let me think about
Yeah.
mine.
Wanna go next, Jose? What will progress our thinking into what is the correct thing to do as a communication uh way, between our people? Like, I mean, of
Right.
course, learning our indigenous language is like by far the best thing, because that reaches back, and what I mean. But like, as for right now, so there won't be no discrepancies and people talking shit up, one to the one and the other. What would be the best thing for right now to benefit us?
Most people talk like different language, like Aztec languages, and sometimes they understand it with other Mexican. You know, like they say, si yo te hablo like Mayan, right? You won't understand it, but they talk Spanish too. You know what I mean? It's all different, but we have to stick together. At a certain point, we have to stick together.
Hey, for everybody in the comments, man, we appreciate you guys tapping in. Shout out to the live. Shout out to the host, Brown Six. I want to read a few of these comments real quick before they
Yeah,
start. They're going
they
off in the
are.
comments, man. It says right here,
Like some
AXO
people
Queen
don't know
22 says
what we
original
doing.
Caribbean people were were and are indigenous people. Some of the Tanio people. Well, Denise Gonzalez says, well, to all white folks, if you speak Spanish, we're all Mexicans. Laughing my ass off. Lace says, put your
I was
actions
confused as
where your
Mexican
mouth
for a couple of
is.
times. I'm
Build
not
the,
gonna lie.
build the fuck to talk. Yvette said, even light people who are mixed is a variable of indigenous experience. Being mixed doesn't make you any less indigenous, and indigeneity is based on the connection to your people's tradition, not DNA. Yep. But what are the roots of brown?
Brown
Question mark.
people? or me.
EXO.
I mean, like I said, like, my people, I mean, my family comes from Jalisco. That's what I was saying. Like, I'll probably be speaking Huichol, which is like, one of my indigenous in that region. It would be Huichol, I believe. I know Yvette was saying that the correct word for Huichol is something else. I forgot what she mentioned, but like, I mean, so that would be for you just to, like, embrace our culture. We'll say,
Yeah.
yeah. What you think,
La
Radical?
cultura,
Um,
cultura de
well,
todos arriba, you know.
my opinion is how we can. Your question was how we can uh, unite and try to get our language together or whatever it was.
Yeah, I mean, just to
Um,
avoid any, like, what I mean. Yeah.
I think first of all we gotta start with history. We gotta start with learning our history first, teaching our history to the younger generation, and then start implementing little small language barriers, right? Not barriers. I'm sorry, little languages part of the culture into everyday language, little bite-sized pieces, so our people could start actually learning a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and hopefully, even though there are differences, there's dark-skinned Latinos, there are light-skinned Latinos and stuff. Even though there are differences under this American soil, they all see us the same. They all treat us the same, and that's something that we have to understand. Can't separate each other. Can't really tell each other again these tribalism type of tactics about I speak better Spanish than you and all this other stuff. The best way to unite and use language to unite is history first, and then putting our indigenous languages into practice and use in little bite-sized pieces. That's what I think.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And then adding the what's it called? Because I know you be speaking to a lot of what's it called, biracial Latinos, Radical. And I know that they have a different point of view in regards to language,
It's,
because then you're introducing another, like, slang within the mix, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, with that, it's a whole dynamic that's different,
Mm,
when it comes to that. But again, it's still the same practice. It's still the same
mm,
history, learning about history. It's still the same thing that we need to go through, because even though the biracial and triracial Latinos, they're going to experience, and they're going to start going into roadblocks and asking the same questions. Hey, where does my people from this side come from?
mm,
Where does this what does this happen? And they're gonna have the same questions. And if we have at least some leaders or some people or prominent figures that have those type of answers, then some of our people won't get lost. Some of our people won't be saying, "Well, I have to go to YouTube University to figure this out." You know what I mean? They'll actually have somebody to go to and speak to and say, this is where you come from and this is where your people come from. They did great things, this and this and this and this and this. They made great big monuments and had cities and had plumbing and stuff like that. Instead of just saying that when we got colonized, that's when all the greatness and achievements happened. No.
no doubt, no doubt. All right, gente, gracias for joining the live.
hey,
Whoever wants to tune out, that way I can bring someone else in.
Oh, I tune out.
You know,
I leave. I leave. Catch you later, Ben. Thank you very much. Have a
thank you,
good
have a
one,
brother.
good one.
everybody.
Always a
Peace.
pleasure having you on the
Yes.
platform, bro.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, I have a question, bro.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Los negros, you know, the black people que dicen aquí in the comments, no, nunca son mexicanos, you know. Los que son brown and proud son los mexicanos, you know. All of a sudden, this thing comes up que los negros son mexicanos, nunca. Pero si somos mexicanos de corazón y familia, que hablamos español bien, Nunca tratamos a la gente mal. Si no entienden, pues, ¿verdad?
Mm.
Somos Chicanos, Mexicanos, and brown and proud, you know, of our family and our sisters and everything. You know what I mean? Well, we have to keep it cool for our Mexican family and our friends, you know, and our people to help the culture every time they need help, you know.
Mm. Uh, Now, whoever wants to join in, we're discussing assimilated tongue versus native tongue, and I still got some questions in regards to like the native tongue. Why would I mean? I understand that's where we come from, but why choose to go back to that? Like, what's the good reason to go back to that language? And that's just playing devil's advocate. You know what I mean? Like, that's the source, right? But why is that? Why is that a good language to go back to? Why can't we invent something for our people now? That was, some may say that was the people back then. They have different ideology and whatnot, right? But we've been colonized, and we have another train of, our own, another mentality now. It's like, is it even possible to go back for uh for a whole to go back to that? I mean, we've been introduced artificial foods. We've been fucking, fucked over 10 times,
Out in here.
right? So it's like, how can we even attempt to go back to that language wise? I wanted to I'm gonna send some invites. Whoever's interested in joining in, you're welcome to join in.
Yeah, yeah.
Yvette said, no, we are still here. Indigenous people have not been exterminated.
Buenas
Fast.
noches, Polito Island.
So,
How's everyone
so
doing?
me,
Hey,
always playing devil's advocate, always trying to see both sides, and not to offend, but just to think, to get that noggin going. Pero like, why would it be a great idea to go back to something like that? Like what would you like if I were to be like one of the colonizers and be like, you know what? We took you out because we thought you were like this. Like, what would you come back and say? But no, why did you take us out? We had this. Our language was great because blank.
Okay, first of all, I want to clarify we were not exterminated. We were not taken out. We are here. We have been here. We have been here before borders. We have been here before the colonizers. We continue to be here, and we will always be here. So we're not going back to anything. We've been here. That's the reason why we have our languages. That it's been tainted, corrupted, and that our people died trying to protect this. That's another story.
Mm,
And that's the reason why the languages have been dying slowly down over 500 years. It's not because our people are ashamed. It's not because our people don't want to teach. It's because it was a way of survival. I can tell you that within my family, I can still see in the records up until 1950s that my family spoke a native language. We spoke Nahuatl. It was the first siblings in my mom's family. Out of 14 siblings, the ones that were born before 1960, they're still registered as indigenous people. It was until after 1960 that they're not. They're just Mexicanos. So it's been forced throughout generations, but it's not because our people chose to, or they've been ashamed, or because they were erased. It's been forced on us, but we have found ways to survive. So when I think we go back to that, like I've said it before, as indigenous people, everything we have, our looks, our way of believing, our spirituality, our cosmovision, our creation stories, our traditions, our food, our medicine are direct reflections of the land that we come from. We are one with the land. The languages that we speak are a direction of that land, a reflection of that land. So when we talk about natural law and order, Those languages are the natural law. Those languages are a reflection of the land, the way that it speaks to us. That's if we want to create balance and understand why life is so important, why things what's the difference between being superficial and something more spiritual, and even religion, because it's a different interpretation of these things. I think if we want to overcome these issues, like putting profit over people, we need to go back to these things, because even that tribalism that you guys were talking about before, it's not bad. It's just that it's been weaponized against us. But that tribalism is the one thing that allowed people to survive. So it's simple. We need to go back to it, because that's who we are as people. We will not be here if it was not for that relationship with the land itself. Those languages, that culture, tradition, looks, language, all of it is a direction of who you are as people.
That's a great direction. The direction of where now based on like the language itself of our indigenous, how hard is it to like be able to communicate in with the language? I know it's not like the like almost a like the alphabet. Like, is it how hard is it to learn the alphabet of your particular region of what your ancestors were speaking?
Well, I think like everything else, I think it depends on the practice, right? Whether, let's just, for example, when you come to the United States, I can tell you, I came here when I was 15, and I learned how to speak the language within 3 months. But that was because I was forced to. I didn't have any other choice. I had to. I had to assimilate to survive. Um, I think it's a similar thing with our indigenous languages. Honestly, in Mexico, we have already a lot of Nahuatl language incorporated in our everyday life. There are words that we use every single day that come from Nahuatl. If you want to learn how to communicate, how to hold a conversation, even how to pray in our native language, which is the most powerful way of prayer, you need to practice. And to practice, you need
What's
someone to
happening?
talk to.
Yeah. What is the importance of language altogether if we're not able to communicate with
Um,
ourselves and ourselves?
so basically, I would pull up the information from here, right? Like whatever that information is. And then, oh, you guys asking me a question?
Yeah, go ahead, carnal.
Oh, sorry. Let me, if it's all right, I just want to jump on just to let you know, I'm in the middle of a little something. Give me a couple minutes and I'll have some free time and I'll hop back on with you guys if that's all right.
All right,
Oh,
carnal. That's right.
thank you.
Yep.
Um,
So, what was
Yeah.
your
What do you
question
think,
again, hermano?
Yvette? Yeah. What do you think about what is the point of language altogether if there's some saying, "Oh, I'm not gonna speak Spanish because it's the colonizer," and this and that. If si alguien que no quiere hablar español porque it's a colonizer language and they don't want to learn it and they can't even speak with their abuelita, or what I mean, like, then what's the whole point of everything if
Yeah.
they're trying to reach a level that is way back before our abuelitas, but can't speak to our immediate family? Then what's the whole point of everything?
I completely agree with that. Let me just tell you that if you cannot communicate with your family, with your community, unfortunately, the most spoken language throughout this continent, it is Spanish. It is one of the most spoken languages in the world. So I don't agree with the idea that we should not speak Spanish. I don't agree with the idea that everyone needs to speak Spanish to prove your identity or your nationality. If for different reasons, we all have different experiences as Mexicanos, as like, I don't, quote unquote, Latinos, as indigenas, as these are all part of our experience. But I don't believe that anything should be forced on anybody. I don't. You do not need to speak Spanish to be Mexicano, Chicano. You do not need to speak a native language to be indigena. Those things do not determine your identity. However, if you want to learn who you are, where you come from, you need to learn how to communicate with your people. How can I build a connection with my people, even if we are Nahuatl? It's the most spoken.
So this is part two, I guess, of this topic. Uh, Instagram is doing this 1 hour thing again, I guess. It stopped doing it for a while, but it's doing it again, this 1 hour thing. I don't know why it does it randomly. Man. Yvette, disculpa. Instagram's doing this 1 hour thing again. I don't know, the last talk that we had last week, it let me do 4 hours. But this time around, it's letting me do only 1 hour. So it picks and chooses, I guess. Quién sabe por qué. But here we go. I'm gonna send that request. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Hermana, ¿cómo estás? Ay,
Hermanos, like,
disculpa,
where'd
no,
you go?
like,
What
I don't
happened
know
to
why
you?
Instagram picks and
No,
chooses
no te
cuando
preocupes.
quiere solamente dejarte una hora, 4 horas. Last episode that I had is, me dejó 4 horas, y esta vez nomás una hora. Yeah, so I
Oh,
don't know
damn.
why it does that. It's weird, but anyway, as we were speaking, we were saying that why can't, I mean, what is the point of arguing, back and forth? Immediate circumstances, we can't speak with the ones that we love, the ones that we should be communicating, getting that knowledge from, which is our immediate family, right? Especially our abuelitos, abuelitas, right? We should be getting that
Yeah.
information because you never know. And these
Yes.
days, they might not be here anymore. And all that library of information will go away, right? And if we can't extract that from them in the form of communication, then what's the whole point of the fight, right?
Yes, I absolutely agree. Like I was saying, I think it's necessary. Not that you have to. Again, I don't believe that anything should be forced on anybody. But if you really want to learn who you are, where you come from, you need to know the experiences of your family. You need to learn the experiences of your grandparents, of your parents. I know that we've been through a lot as community, as people, and there's a lot of trauma. A lot of these stories are not cute, they're not beautiful, they're not glamorous, they're hard. They come with a lot of pain, they come with a lot of suffering, but ultimately that's who we are as people. And I know that I used the word Latino earlier, and let me just clarify, I freaking hate that word. I do not like this label. Oh, hell yeah, that's the compass right here. I'm glad
You
that
up?
he,
Buenas noches.
hey. But yeah, I do not like the label Latino. I do not like the label Hispano. I respect the people who identify with these labels. I understand that they're in a different journey, at a different pace, at a different point. But I really hope that everyone gets to reconnect with the true identity, because we all come from somewhere. And before these titles were imposed on us, they're very political, and they are very much for the purposes of dividing and conquering. They do not define who we are as people. So what defines you, again, it's the connection to your people, your relationship with the land, to your community. And if you are just learning and reconnecting, learning your native language, that's completely okay. But it's not just about learning the language or collecting information in your brain. It's not a library. It's about decolonizing the way you think, your language, your time, your identity. Because our ancestors, before they thought in English or Spanish or any other first language, they had to think in our native languages. And there's a whole philosophy behind that. Your cosmovision, your creation stories, the way that you understand life. That's the purpose of that language. And but I agree that we need to learn how to function in this world, because this is what we have right now. Unfortunately, it's not pretty. It's not what we want, but this is what we have. So to decolonize doesn't mean that we go 500 years ago and that we try to live the way they did before. It means that we rescue what we have right now, we move forward, and we continue to preserve that knowledge.
And Owen, what do you think about that question that I was posing to us, to Yvette? that what's the point of fighting this fight of language if we can't speak to our immediate families, our abuelitos, abuelitas?
So I think of, if you think of how did we go from our native language to the one we speak now, right? Even how we went from native language, which there were multiple native languages that indigenous people were speaking, and then that transferred over to either Spanish, English, Portuguese, Italian, or French, right? And so the same process that we went through that as even Mexicanos, we went from Spanish to now learning English, right? So that same process can happen again. A lot of people love to take up European languages and be like, oh, I'm learning how to speak German. I'm learning how to speak Italian. Why would you do that when you have a language that's dying? You know, like I remember when I was young and people was like, oh, interested about learning Roman, the Roman language, because it was dying, right? Like how indoctrinated are we that we would rather rescue the colonizers' dying language than our own ancestors' dying language? So you could still speak to your abuelos, because truth is you're not going to learn it in 1 or 2 years. It's going to take several years. So by the time that you fully learn it, either A, unfortunate, your abuelos are gone, so you just have your parents. But you'll pass it on to your children, and you'll pass it on to your nieces and your nephews. And then you could even tell your parents or those that haven't learned it yet, like what words that they're using today comes from a native language, like tomate, chocolate, aguacate. You know, I'm from Zacatecas, and we use a word to describe ants. We use a esquel, right? A lot of people just say hormigas. So esquel or asquel, that comes from a native language too. So that itself, making that connection in Zacatecas, I was pretty amazed. Like, oh, okay, that's pretty dope. I didn't know that. And I would always wonder, like, how come all the other kids only say hormigas when they come from Michoacan, they come from Sinaloa, they come from other places. But only kids that came either from the Zacatecas region or surrounding region, like Jalisco, what's the other one? Aguascalientes, is San Luis Potosí. They would know what it is. So making those connections and making those bridges, I think it's a beautiful thing.
That's a good connection you just made. The reason why some would say isquel instead of hormiga, like there's a reason for that. There's roots that comes with why we speak, how we speak, and like my family's from Jalisco, so like we say certain things that other people, even from Jalisco as well, but just a different region, right, would say it differently. So it's like it. There's a reason,
Yeah.
but now the question is, why should anyone care to research and find out how we live if that's not how we live now, and that's not how we speak now, and that's not how we can do things and get things done now with our current world that we live in the U.S., right? Like, and a lot of people would make that. A lot of our people would make that case, right? That case of like, how can there be? Ooh, what is that noise? Okay. How can there be any progress right now with our immediate people in the States if that's not what's gonna give our that progress in right now? Like I understand
Well,
the long run
well,
how our people
I
can benefit it from, but like,
I could answer that already. So to me, that sounds like a very limited mindset.
mm,
So that person who's thinking that way has a very limited mindset, and they're not thinking what opportunities can exist out there or what opportunities can one make. I'll give you a few opportunities that people are already making. There are NAWAC classes, right? Well, what do you need for NAWAC classes? You need an instructor. Well, who's going to be that instructor? Is it going to be a blue eyes, green eyes, pale skin? Or is it going to be somebody who actually reflects the language? Is it going to be somebody who may have some roots, but looks more like they're from Spain than they are from the land? And they're going to be the instructor. They're going to be the one with the 401k. They're going to be with the one with the college housing. They're going to be the one, benefiting that generational wealth, or can it be one of ours? So I'll give you an example. There was a street vendor I was helping, and him, his brother, and his dad have 2 years that they came from Oaxaca, and all three of them are fluent speakers in Nahua from Oaxaca, but they were embarrassed to speak it. And the dad, I was talking to the dad, and I'm like, why were you embarrassed to speak it? And he said, well, porque en México nos discriminan y pues aquí pues hasta más, ¿para qué lo voy a hablar? Y dije, no, es que las cosas están cambiando. You know, puede, and I was telling him about that instructor class. I'm like, usted puede ser hasta profesor. Si sabe el lenguaje muy bien, puede ser profesor. Como yo, que ¿por qué no? Si hay profesores que van a otros países y enseñan inglés y ni lo hablan muy bien y están ganando buen dinero. Have you not gone to court and seen translators who could barely speak the language, but yet they're getting paid top dollar to play the part? And half of the shit they're saying is incorrect, and that's an illegal document. That's an illegal representation. So imagine someone that does speak Nahua. Now here's a very big opportunity. Majority of the people who ICE detains are native speaking people, meaning they don't have translators. That's an opportunity right there. You can go and apply and be a translator. So someone who thinks, oh, that's not going to get me nowhere, it's not going to get your colonized mindset nowhere. That means you're limited. That means, open up and learn more.
That's a good point of view. See, a lot of people don't see it that
Yeah.
way. They're quick to say, "Oh no," but sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no,
Finish your thought.
sorry.
Finish your
No, I
thought.
was
I'm
just saying,
sorry.
like people are so quick to just like shut it down. Like they're not open minded to, and that's the thing though. Like I hear that a lot from like people that I conversate with in regards to like these questions, right? These questions of like why should we? Why should we? Like what is the beneficial of it? I mean, and of course, like I like seeing both sides, and to me, I understand. I know why. I'm leaning more. I'm getting closer and closer to wanting to know more of my roots of who I am, of my source, of my But a lot of people don't see it that way, and it could be that they're not open minded. It could be that they just don't care. It could be that the brainwash of America has gotten to them. Pero pues I want to hear people's point of view.
Yeah, I think the reason why we don't find value in it today, and I know that I say this all the time, but it's capitalism. That's the whole purpose why this entire system has been set by it is capitalist by design, and that racism is a tool of that capitalism. So obviously it's gonna make you think that there's no beauty, no wealth, no purpose in who you are, in your identity, in your roots, because that happened so long time ago. That was 500 years ago. We have this idea that development and progress are equal technology and the destruction of the planet, the destruction of Mother Earth. We think that, we equate these technological advances with uh, the world that we live in today. Have we forgotten that our people were the masters of time and space? That they have the most sophisticated cities, pyramids, they were the astrologers, poets, scientists. I mean, our people were the most advanced people in the planet. We still have the most accurate scientific calendar to this day. Just think about that. The most scientific accurate. I'm not saying spiritual. I'm not saying like indigenous. I'm saying scientific. It's not my opinion. This is science. If you don't believe in spirituality, religion, fine. But science is telling you that we have the most accurate calendar, that we mastered the reading of time. Can you picture how deep that is? That our people mastered the study of time? We studied everything, and I mean everything, from every single little plant, from every little animal. Our people were just like amazing. They studied. They have a deep knowledge of life and everything that exists within this world. So when I keep hearing that, oh, you need to learn English, this is where you live, this is America, honey, the United States does not have an official language. First of all, first of all, English is not the official language of anybody other than fucking England. Okay, so if you want to speak English, go to England. Period. If you want to speak Spanish, fine. This is where we live. I get it. But that was forced on us. Don't forget that. Don't forget that that has been by design. And I'm tired of hearing that, oh, you need to get over it. This is not about hating the colonizer. No, I do not hate the colonizer. I do not hate white people. I fucking hate white supremacy. I denounce white supremacy. And I do that because I love my people. I love my roots. And I love the world of knowledge that comes with reclaiming who I am. So stop crying about this and telling us to get over it because you guys are the crybabies. You guys are the ones that need to get over it. You are on stolen land, on indigenous land. If you don't like it, deal with it because we're not going to go anywhere. We've been here, we are here, and we're always going to be here.
Well said,
Thank you.
hermana, well said,
Paso camarada.
gracias. Oh, ese fue el camarada acá. Yeah, so one thing that I do focus a lot on and I talk a lot about is the youth, right? Youth and how it's becoming popular to be less than smart in pop culture, right? With our youth, right? They're trying to make them into like these mindless people, right? Now, when it comes to because this is the thing that a lot of would say, right? Like kids, when they tell them, like, hey, you should learn your native tongue, right? Your native language. Now that you're a kid, it's easier for you to absorb that right? As that language, it's easier to learn the language when you're a kid. And the first thing that a lot of youth say is, no, why would I speak like that? Like, that's not how am I going to communicate with anyone like as a kid? What would make it popular for a kid to gravitate towards something like this? What do you guys think? Like what would make a teenager want to learn this?
I
Whoever
just
wants to
want to
jump
say
in.
the fourth person on here, you have a lot of echo going on. You might want to mute yourself.
Hey, what is it?
The
Azteca,
brown beret.
Azteca, can you mute it for 1 minute?
I did. I just noticed, bro, because it shut me off on my phone. I always have, you know what's up. On my phone, I always have some shit going on, so I had to go on her phone. I just noticed, bro. I'm trying to like. I just figured it
Only
out.
use one phone. Only use one phone because then there's echo. Yeah. How do we make kids interested in the language? Is that your question?
Yeah.
So that question to me sounds like how do we make anybody interested in anything, right? And that would be almost like trying to make anyone do anything that they don't really want to do, right? So I'm not into trying to control people. So instead of thinking from that lens and thinking how do we make anybody interested in native language, how do we make native language more interesting so that those that gravitate will gravitate better. So those that are learning the language, I think it's up to them, including myself. I'm learning it at a very slow pace, but I'm learning it. So every time, for example, both Yvette and myself, we are community members who often find ourselves behind a megaphone, a microphone, on stage somewhere. So then we'll drop little, juice. We'll drop little jams that says, we'll teach our gente. There's, that the famous phrase, "Viva la raza," right? So just to push them a little bit further to the roots, we'll say "Viva la raza indígena." Because if you just say "Viva la raza," well, what raza? Which one are we talking about? So let's make sure we know which one we're talking about. So now we're highlighting la raza indígena. So once we plant that seed, the next thing we'll say, gracias. And by the way, and now what? You could say tlazokamati. And then we'll have them repeat it. And then so now we're planting the seeds, right? So now the language is becoming a little bit of interest to people, not because we're making them interested, but because we're making the language interesting, rather. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, the way that we can make the youth interested is by teaching them who they are, who they truly are. Who are you before these people told you who to be? Who are you before these borders, before these things came? Like, who are you from that place of authenticity, right? Before this society forces you to change yourself and adapt yourself for survival and to fit in. And if you grow up around your culture, if you grow up around your traditions, there's no need for me to tell you who you are because you already know. One thing that I absolutely love and adore about my kids, they always have the option to come with me. They know where I'm going, they know what I'm doing, and they have the option to come or not. And it all has been there with us when we go all together to the sweat lodge. A lot of times they don't go in, they stay praying outside. But guess what? They understand they're in ceremony and they're in prayer. And even though they're outside, they're still praying with us. And they get to witness things that we don't get to see because we're inside. But they're there. And not because I'm forcing them, not because I'm making them go, because they understand the value of these traditions. They want to be there because they know who they are without me pushing them. This is what you have to do, and you have to speak this, and you have to do this. No, I'm just sharing with them what I know, where I come from, and our responsibility. Because our indigeneity, it's not just like a trend. It's not just something that we get to say, oh, we're indigenous. Ahí les vamos, cabrones, muévanse. We're indigenous and land back. No, 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 no. Honey, if you're living this, if you're claiming that indigeneity, comes with a huge responsibility. And that's what I'm teaching them. That if this is how they move and this is what they claim, they have the responsibility to walk in the gateway, to preserve this knowledge, and to make sure that we continue to pass that on. And again, I didn't force that on them. I've only shared and exposed them to their true tradition, to their true identity. And they're following their role. I don't have to force anything on them. And to me, as a mother, that's beautiful. And I hope that more children get that opportunity to have that accessibility to their language, to their tradition, to their culture, the true culture, not who they told us to be, not who they forced us to be, but our true traditional culture that reflects where we come from.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's a very good point that you made. That let's not force it, pero they need to know why. We need to understand why and embrace it. Once they embraced it, that love for it will come genuinely, not because they're trying to make you proud. Because a lot of the times, I would assume when someone is doing something and the kids are watching, they want to mimic and they want to say, "Oh, look what I'm doing, mom! Look what I'm doing, dad! I'm doing it because I might want to make you proud, right?" But once they embrace it and fully know what they're doing, that's beautiful because they're knowledgeably doing it on purpose, con propósito, instead of saying it just doing it nomás por nomás. Pero the it froze again, Azteca. Let me so now this question. When it comes to there we go. When it comes to like going into the the whole study of language itself, like how can one like prepare themselves to go in that, into wanting to learn this? And first of all, like even before that, can you guys share, how and what drove you to even learn the language? Like, what was the moment where you were like, you know what, I'm going down this path, and no one can stop me?
Yvette, you want to go?
Whoever wants to go, yeah.
Do you
Go
want to
for it.
go first, Aaron? Well, for me, look, and like I've shared before, I was born and raised with my community. There were things that we just did naturally, without understanding why, because we didn't address that. Like my grandpa will get upset, my grandma will get sad, and it was just something we avoided. Fortunately, I spent a lot of time with them individually, and I asked a lot of questions. Every time that my grandma did a temazcal for my tias, before and after they had babies, and they will kick me out, like I will find my way to sneak around and look through the peephole, like I knew what they were doing, and I paid attention. So I spent time with my grandpa in the fields, and ahí en el campo con el frijol, con las habas, con el maíz. So I've always held that connection with my land because I grew up there. I just didn't understand a lot of things because we didn't address them. So it was just normal life. Um, Obviously, we come to the US and there's a sense of nostalgia because we miss our life. We left everything behind, everything that I've ever known, my language, my people, even the position that I had in my community. And there's always that sense of trying to stay connected. And a lot of times we replicate those things by doing things here in the community or trying to find our people, like the tianguis, las marquetas, the restaurants, los bailes, los conciertos. Those are places where we try to find our connection. But at some point, that's not enough. For me, it came in. Look, I have always been like really into my culture, always, since I was a kid. In Mexico, I did a lot of contests of poetry, oratoria, and a lot of it is to improvise within, like right then and there. And a lot of the topics are historical, they're cultural. So I'm a nerd. That's who I am. And I've known a lot of things, but I realized that not everything was accurate. And when my health became so compromised that the doctors told me go home, get comfortable because you're dying, we don't know how much more time you have. I started learning ancient cultures like ancient Chinese medicine, Ayurveda from the Hindus, and I realized that these ancient civilizations have a lot in common because that reflects who they are as people and their geography and their land. They use medicines that only grow in the region, foods that only grow in the region. And then I had like, wait a second, my ancestors have something similar, but from our land. My ancestors have their own medicine. My ancestors have their own teachings. What the fuck am I doing looking for answers in distant lands when it's right in front of me? It's within me. So that's when I stopped learning and I stopped practicing. I started practicing the way that we connect with the sun every morning, the way that we give thanks and gratitude for our food, the way that we interact with our families, even the whole thing of praying before you eat. It's not religious, it's just to connect with the food that you're consuming. It has a DNA, it has a memory, it has a consciousness. So when you give gratitude, you are connecting with it before you ingest it. It's a whole different of appreciating and understanding life. So it wasn't like I decided to go this way. It was more like I decided to reclaim it. I decided to continue something that I was taught before and that we were forced to stop because that's what happened. Displacement of our people continues through those borders, through economic pressure, instability. That's why I ended up here to begin with. That's why my ancestors from California ended up in Mexico because they had to survive. So we've been through this displacement for a long, long time, for many generations. But I just decided to continue something that I was forced to stop. But it was for survival too, so I could stay alive. And I did it. I did it. I'm here. When they gave up on me, doctors didn't have answers. They did no surgery, no doctor could help me. I'm here. I'm here, and I'm so
Oh,
grateful for it.
that is beautiful. Like, I love that you incorporate the why that a lot of people are searching, right? A lot of people are searching the why in their lives, right? And it's no coincidence, you know what I mean? Like, um, some may say not, but I really do think that our ancestors, like, they they seek for us even now. Like, they seek for us to seek them. I believe. I believe that's my feeling of like why I'm getting closer to that. I'm getting closer and closer to that. Like, and it's not something that I'm reading. It's not something that I'm watching. It's not something that I'm talking to people about. It's more of a feeling. You know what I mean? Because someone could tell you all these things, but when you feel it, it's a totally different. You know, that's an emotion that you can't get from words, from vision, from it's an internal thing. But I guess just like you said, hermana, like when you're not in that level yet in your life, you just won't get it. You're not gonna understand it. You're not gonna. People can tell you this and that, but you're gonna be like, "Pero por qué? But why? Why?" You know what I mean? Like you're gonna be questioning hasta que te pegue. Like, okay, damn, that's why. You know what I mean? It don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Before I hand it over to Aaron, I just want to add this is the reason why I don't argue with people online. I'm not here to share this with the people who don't want it. I'm not here to convince anybody. I'm not here to change anyone's mind. I'm here to share what I know and what I've experienced with the people who are seeking the same way of life and the same connection. If you identify as Latino and you think the US is the greatest country and the colonizers are the best thing that ever happened, I'm not going to try to convince you. I can't help you. You have already your mind made up, and so do I. So there's no point of arguing. I'm here to share everything that I am, my experience, my knowledge, my mistakes, los chingadazos que he recibido with the people that want to learn, the ones that are ready. I'm here to speak for the people that are trying to understand the why and that they're trying to walk this red road. I'm not here to convince anybody. Not, like I'm so over that. My time and energy are so precious that I'm only here to give it to the people that actually want it. I'm not here to give unsolicited advice. Like I'm done. I'm all over that shit. But the truth is that the more that you connect and the more that you answer that calling, you're awakening your ancestral memory. That's why I say your first reconnection needs to happen with your ancestors. And the only way that happens is in prayer and ceremony. It has nothing to do with religion. Nothing to do with religion. And if you don't understand that, then I can't help you.
A big shout out real quick, Aaron, antes que comiences. In the house, Jaguar in the house. ¿Cómo estás, man?
Jump on.
Peace, hermano. Peace. ¿Cómo estás? I'm gonna send you a request if you wanna hop on this conversation. We're talking about assimilated tongue versus native tongue, the importance of it. So I don't know if you remember the question, carnal.
Yeah,
Aaron.
what got me interested in learning the language and connecting
Yeah.
to it. So as a kid, a lot of my primos would make fun of me for my phenotypes because they share more of the European phenotype. So they would make fun of me, like they'll be like, "Hey, you're not getting no barba. What's going on with you? You know, like you look like an Indio. You have the Indio barba." And I'll be like, "Damn, that's right. How come I'm not getting what they're getting? You know?" And then they'll be like, "Estás bien prieto. Pareces Indio." And I'll be like, "Damn, that's kind of fucked up. Like everybody else is lighter." And they'll be like, "Tienes el pelo bien lacio," you know, because like my hair is fucking thin. So then I'll be like, "Damn, that's fucked up. I can't rock certain faintness that they have," you know. So then I started like being ashamed of that. And then when I started looking at the Aztecs and I started looking at the, you know, the very famous Aztec holding the chick, right? And I'm like, well, that fool looks all built and shit. That fool looks firme. Like I could be like him. And then I started finding a little bit of connection through just reflection, you know, like seeing myself in them. If they're telling me I'm Indio, well, then let me check out the Indios. So, you know, what are they about? And so I would see that fool holding his girl, and I'm like, hey, that fool ain't too bad. And then I would see the other warriors, and I'm like, oh, this fools look pretty dope. So I started finding a little bit of pride in that, without knowing shit. And it wasn't truly until 2020 that I truly walked in into the opportunity to be part of a community that was already on that road to connection. Because before 2020, I just knew a lot of like history, and historically I knew the content of what had happened, why, you know, how we got to where we got to, but I didn't yet see myself being part of that history. I was like, I'm just the aftermath, you know? And if I'm the aftermath, I'm not really them. But who am I? So the question was always, well, then who am I? If I'm the aftermath, then who am I truly? Because I know I'm also not Spaniard. I know I'm also not a gringo. So I just thought I'm just Chicano, you know? Soy de Zacatecas y ahora soy Chicano. That's it. So it wasn't until 2020 I started meeting this community that was already on a long path of reconnecting. A lot of them have been walking the decolonizing path for 20 years, and I started learning from them. And then from them, I started meeting other people. And the more I learned, I was like, oh shit, now I'm really interested of who my people are, because I know now that I know better, the Mexica was one region. they were not all of Mexico. So if they're not all of Mexico, and that's one thing I see a problem with the Chicanismo, that they tell you, oh, we're all Mexica, but that's not true. You know, to a sense it is, because to a sense we are connected culturally to the Aztec calendar, what we know as the Aztec calendar. To a sense, we are connected to the language. A lot of us are through a variant of Nahuatl. Another way we're connected is that a lot of us hosted the Mexica on their 200 years of their journey to Tenochtitlan. So I had to learn all this stuff, and then I learned that Zacatecas was the original place of the Zacateco, which is one of the nations of the Chichimeca. So then I'm like, all right, I got that down. Let me see what they're about. What did they build? And then I traveled to Zacatecas, and I wanted to see the ruins. And so I went to all the ruins in Zacatecas, and then I went to go connect. And it wasn't until I was right there looking at it that I started to see myself. Like, oh shit, like this is what my people's about. So then the next question was, well, what was their language? I had been learning a variant of Nahua, which I now learned it's more of a Huasteca variant of Nahua, but that's further away from Zacatecas. So then one thing I learned is that I might not know the actual variant of what my people were speaking, but I could learn the closest one. And a close variant would be Jalisco, which there is a Jalisco variant of Nahua. I think it's called Mexicano, actually. And then there's also the classical Nahua. So I'm trying to learn those two, get closer to those two, because they're the closest ones to my region. And so that's important too, knowing our lineage, learning where our people come from, and having those conversations with our grandparents, because I asked my abuelo, el que parece más indio, so then I was like, abuelo, de dónde venimos? And then he told me, pues, mi papá y mi abuelo y mi bisabuelo y el bisabuelo de él, todos venimos de aquí, de estos campos, somos campesinos, siempre siempre eso es lo único que hemos hecho. So then I was like, okay. Then I learned that campesinos is another word for indigenous in Puerto Rico. That's what they call indigenous people, because son del campo, gente del campo, y venimos de las sierras de Zacatecas. So then that gave me all I needed to know, but it was also beautiful that I attended the ceremony in Zacatecas, and I got to meet the gobernadora indígena de Zacatecas, and she gave a beautiful speech, and to end her speech, she said, si todavía están confundidos y creen que ustedes no son indígenas, es porque así nos borraron, pero si ustedes son zacatecanos y pueden ver que su familia siempre ha estado aquí, entonces son zacatecos. And that was nice, that to get that, just to get that in ceremony and to get that amongst, it must have been like 250 other Zacatecanos just, wanting to learn and reconnect. And that was nice to be a part of that.
That is very interesting. Now, I only have like 10 minutes left of the conversation. I'm going to wrap it up after this hour. Like I said, Instagram's only do 1 hour per now. So now let's wrap it up with this. For someone that is in that level now and wants to reach out and learn this language, and starting small, crawling before we walk, like, what would you guys suggest they do first before anything to get started in this path? Whoever wants to go first.
I'll go quick. I would say the first thing you want to do is talk to your elders. First thing, because that's the limited time. That's a limited time you have available. Elders are not going to stay here forever. So speak to them as much as possible. Record the conversation if possible, because you might not remember everything and you might want to go back to it. Learn if you have other elders you never met. Like I met elders I didn't even know they were my elders until I made those questions. Like, is there, does my abuela have hermanos? Because my abuela died like 40 years ago, but not 40, but like 37 years ago. So, but she still has a brother, and he's really old, and I went to go meet him and just go talk to him, I had never met him in my life. So it was like meeting a stranger. So meet the elders, first thing, and then go from there. Try to build a family tree, and then go from there. And then I'll pass it on to Yvette, because she has more of the logistics on that side.
Yeah, I agree that it has to start within your family. If you still have the honor and luxury to have your abuelitos, some people still have like great grandparents you have a fountain of resources and wisdom, and they might not be able to provide you like actual names and facts, but that's a starting point, and that's how you start going back. I know in Mexico, the church, well, not just the church, but the missions in the United States did such a freaking great job at keeping records. It is insane. It is disgusting at the same time, but it's insane. And we have these tools, so go for it. Research the census in Mexico, research death certificates, birth certificates, marriage certificates, anything that you can. If you have the full name of your grandparents and their parents, man, just keep going back. Their birth certificates have the full name of their parents and both families. So you can start looking by birth certificate. Like I found my grandma's birth certificate, the full names of her parents, and then I looked for those records and I kept going back because they don't have the names. The Hacienda system also did a great job of keeping records. Unfortunately, a lot of us have Spanish last names because we were property of the colonizers. We were peones. Peones in Mexico is exactly just like being a slave. So look for those records. They're there. You can look inside the church. You can look at the internados, haciendas. They have those records. And make sure that you are reclaiming the language of your region. Like Aaron said, not all of us that are Mexicans are Aztecs. Being Azteca has nothing to do with being from a geography or a place. Azteca is a whole different concept, a philosophy, a way of life, something you become, not something that you're born. So make sure that you're reconnecting with your roots, from your geography, from where your people come, and that's the language that you need to reclaim, to reconnect. Um, but if all you have is Nahuatl, there is a lot of resources. Trust me, if you don't know where you come from, the community is not gonna turn you away. We're not gonna turn away anybody. Anybody that wants to reconnect and walk the red road, even the Lakotas share with us a tradition. We pray inside those sweat lodges in Lakota, but we know damn well that's not our tradition, that we're being welcomed, that we are guests, and we accept that with a huge honor and gratitude. But we're not claiming to be Lakota. So, there's a time and place and role for everything. So just know that if you don't know where you come from, it is completely okay. But understand that if you speak Nahuatl and you follow this tradition, it doesn't make you Nahuatl. It just means that you don't know where you come from as an indigenous person, and we still love you, embrace you, and accept you.
That is beautiful. Like, let me give you a little brief, just a little something of the reason why, these topics are very important to me. And I understand both sides, and that's why I like, you know, picking people's brains on both ends of the question and stuff. So now I've had a couple of friends that they chose to go into, learning more about their native roots and, and this and that. And they were like, kind of like, you know, play that superiority with me. And that's, you know, you start to, I mean, the brain is an awesome thing, but, you start to develop these questions of like, well, why do I want to become this person? And this is like, this is just based on, and that's the thing that a lot of people, just like religion, if a person, misbehaves or does something, something to offend you in church, people blame the church, people blame the religion itself, right? Instead of blaming that particular person, right? But see, that's humanity, you know what I mean? Like, I started blaming, like, well, why do I want to become this? And if they're gonna turn out to be like this, but that's the thing, though. You live and you learn. You start leveling up and thinking differently, right? And now, the whole, oh, but you're Chicano, you know what I mean? You need to become this, you need to become that, and that whole, you know, fight for what's right, what's not right, you know what I mean, kicks in, and I think that's the problem with a lot of our people también, that, or just humanity itself, right? Que if something or someone offends us, we immediately shut down, and we don't want to continue with that, and they blame on what it is that they were talking about. If it's language, oh, that language, I'm not going to learn it because this is how they are. That religion, I'm not going to be in it because this is how they are. You know what I mean? So like once you've I guess train your mind to think individual. Every individual is different and they'll treat you differently because everyone's different, right? Everyone's at their own level. Maybe that person that was learning Nawa at the time and thought that if they're not learning Nawa, then you ain't shit. That's how they were treating me. You know what I mean? So and now I'm saying I'm thinking like, you know what? No, everyone's at their own level. Me feeling that I want to reach that that part of my life is because of my benefit. It's not to make them feel, oh, you know what? Now I'm at your level now because now I'm learning what you're learning. No, it's not to talk about it like in a way of like, oh, look, like be proud of me because look at what I've done. No, it's your own successes, like your own internal what you want to do for your life, for your future, right? And that's the thing that people need to go away with this topic. At least know that and this is from experience. Know that do it for you. Don't do it for a friend that is like, you know what, posting it on IG. Look, I'm over here at the retreat. Like, nah, do it for you because you want to be at that level for you. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what I'm kind of
Right.
getting at. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm kind of getting at, where I want to do it because I want to be, because like
Uh,
I'm hating this whole United States thing. Like at this point, you know what I
if
mean?
if I may though, there are different levels, but one thing that sets levels apart is intention. So if the intention is pure, no matter what level the person may be at, it's all good. But if the intention is to exploit, if the intention is to profit and benefit and make cacao yoga ceremonies, fuck out of here. And and I will call shit out like that out. Once I see that the intention is just that, now they might be misled, which is different. They might be misinformed, which is different. They might be unknowingly, unconsciously walking into the wrong circles. That's different. But if I see that someone just has intentions to exploit, to just benefit and continue the colonizer's mentality, fuck out of here. If the other intention, there's
Yeah.
another intention. If the intention is to cause harm, even if they're not benefiting, even if it's not monetary, but they just want to cause harm, fuck out of here too. If the intention is to then say, oh, I'm indigenous and I'm gonna use that as a platform and I'm gonna benefit off that, not from money maybe, but maybe from views, maybe from attention, then fuck out of here too. And one last one. If the intention is to almost use it like a costume, like, because we have a big problem when people put on costumes and they don't belong to it. But people can also do that mentally. People can also do that with energy, right? And they put it on when it's convenient, but then they take it out when it's not convenient, right? They'll put on they'll fill themselves with feathers and whatever it is, and it's very performative. But then the show's over and they're looking more colonizer than the colonizer. You know what I mean? So that's when
Yeah,
I'm like, fuck out of here. But I don't necessarily have to vocalize it. I don't necessarily have to verbalize it. I just won't fuck with that person no more. I'm going to distance myself from that person. And that's my way of saying fuck out of here. That's all I want to say.
yeah.
Yeah, I want to add something real quick, and I hope if it cuts off, don't worry about it. Like we'll end it. But I want to clarify that when we talk about levels, I think we unfortunately have this colonial way of thinking
No.
that it's a hierarchy, that you are here and I'm here, and we go and it's a competition, right? For someone to be at top. In our indigenous way of life, we are not above each other. Our way of seeing things, it's a circle. So we might be at different points and angles of that circle, but it doesn't mean that I'm above you or that I'm below you. It means that I'm just at a different angle from you. But at the end of the day, we're next to each other because we're walking the same path. Whatever you decide to do with this life, it's yours, but we're walking in this life together. So you might be at one point, I might be at another, but there is no thing as hierarchy. I'm not more than you, you're not below me. We have different purposes, different intention, and different responsibilities. So we live our lives accordingly. But this should not be a competition. It should not be about proving who's more native and who's not. We are different people, different experiences, different cultural ties, different traditions, even amongst indigenous peoples. So a lot of people try to reconnect, and they try to, whatever the colonizer told you that an indigenous person looks like, that's the standard you're trying to meet. So that's when we start seeing this performative shit, of like the regalia, the weather, the feathers, things that are not completely necessary, because a lot of times people don't even understand the role and purpose of these things, that you earn them. You don't just grab a feather and put it in your head and that's it. How did you receive that feather? You don't just learn a song and go around and start singing it. Who taught you that song? Did you ask permission? Did your elders teach you that song? Have you been granted the honor of your people to carry on with that tradition? Because you don't just become a medicine man or a shaman by taking a 12-week course and saying namaste and starting drumming circles with yoga. You have these responsibilities when your people give them to you. You are a product of your people. You hold responsibility for your people. That's how we find the responsibilities that we have within our community. You are assigned, you're a reflection of those people. You're not self-appointed. And even when when the people assign you, right? That means that you have a bigger responsibility, because you are carrying the word for all of these people with you. Again, not behind you, next to you. It's always next to each other, because we're walking the same life.
Yeah. Yeah. Would it be far off for me to say that is the frequency type of level that maybe we're trying to reach, the frequency within ourselves, or is that too?
No, I think it's a good word, because one thing, and I'm gonna say this from the scientific perspective, we know that we are energy beings. We know that we are, as human beings, we're made out of light particles called photons. That it doesn't matter how far we are from each other, we are always connected. So that's the whole thing of being part of a bigger consciousness and just one
Mm.
consciousness, right? So if you're at a negative frequency, that's why you're contributing to the collective. If you are at a higher frequency, that's why you're contributing to the collective. So a lot of our traditional ceremonies have been created for the purpose of balancing the energies and the spirit of the earth with the cosmos. Let me repeat that: the earth with the cosmos, because we are one with the earth, we are one with the land, we are one with all living creatures. With that tree is not something separate from me, not something outside of me. The animals, the birds, the water, we are all one living organism within this planet. So our ceremonies are to balance that energy, that frequency, because as human beings in this planet, we have a place in the cosmos, in the greater scheme of things. So it is right. We are energy beings, absolutely. So our ceremonies are for that purpose. And it gets deeper. I know, like, probably what I say doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but the more that you connect, you have to experience this to understand what it feels like, because there's no justice in words. There is nothing that I can tell you that will do justice to the experience, to that connection. That's when you know that creator is real. That's when you know that spirit is real. That's when you know that we are
It's
all the same. And
yeah,
we are not the
it's
same
yeah.
at the
I don't
same
want to get
time.
it confused because I think it's easier to say what it is not than what it is. So what it is not, it's not some,
Mm.
it's not some namaste. We're all human. We're all, peace and love. Todo es perfecto. We're not that shit.
No, but hold on, Aaron, right there. Hold on, because even for the Hindu people, when they say namaste, when they bring their practice, that's not what it means. That's
Yes,
what it has
yes,
been appropriated and
yes.
brought here with the hippies. So it's not to say that the yogis and the Hindu tradition is wrong. It's not.
Hmm.
It's that people have appropriated that and try to take a little bit of this
Hmm.
tradition, a little bit of that, and you like, how did you go to a drumming circle that
Yeah,
starts with
so it's not
namaste?
kumbaya namaste. So,
How
it's
did
not that one. I'm not
right?
speaking obviously of real yogis, the real Hindu traditional people who are also indigenous, Um, I'm speaking of the kumbaya namaste with cacao in yoga, and they're just fucking throwing everything in a blender and calling it high spirit and high frequency. Nah, not that shit. That's some other type of high frequency, you know. So the high frequency Yvette is speaking of, it's hard to explain because it's an experience, and therefore you need to experience it, and you need to come into that experience in your own way when the time is right. And neither you should throw yourself at it, nor should it be thrown at you. You know, it should be in rhythm. It should be in synchrony. So it should be this very like balance. You know, with everything that's around you, your environment, the people you're talking to, the circles you're walking into, the place that you're currently at. You know, like for instance, it took me 2 years to get invited to a sweat lodge, but I kept asking for it. I kept asking for it, and I was so eager that they would see that it's not your spirit asking for it. It's your ego asking for it, and therefore they would never invite me. And I stopped asking, and then boom, I got invited. You know, so it's at the right time, and I'm glad I didn't get invited during that time because I was in a different place. I was in a different mindset. You know, so I'm glad that it happened the way it did, and I was blessed that it was like, you know, beautiful the way it was. And so it's easier to say what it is not, you know, than to say what it is, because then even if I try to paint you my experience, that's my experience. You probably will have a totally different one, or you might have a similar one, but I don't want to pervert what you may have by painting my picture, because then now you have a picture that you might want to set as a bar, and you're like, well, if I don't get that, then maybe my experience was not real, maybe my experience was not legit, and your experience is going to be as legit as it is, you know. So
Mm.
that's why I'd rather not paint that picture, so that you get your own picture.
Yeah. And you bet you brought her back around and full circle when you mentioned that it's like it's hard to explain in words. So that just brought it back to the original topic, which is language, right? That is very language is very limited when you're trying to convey something. More of an action speaks. Just like the people what people say, actions speak louder than words. Like you can communicate something more with action than with language. You know what I mean? So like it supersedes any type of language, right? Uh, so yeah, that's beautiful. Like I love the way you brought it back around and get on what the stuff you said about that you have to be ready mentally and spiritually to be able to be around this circle, right? To be able to be and others pick up on it, like you said, others pick up on it until when you're ready, then it's like your spirit is asking. You were asking verbally, but now once you were actually ready, your spirit was asking, right? So it's that's a beautiful thing, bro. And not a lot of people would catch that. They'll be like, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? I don't get it. I don't understand it internally. I can't picture it. But like that's what Yvette was talking about, that level. Now as superior, but level that you got yourself prepared to be there, you know, and that's a beautiful thing. That's crazy. That's just to fathom that. That's just yeah.
It let me tell you, it's one of the most beautiful experiences. I went through so many things. I was raised as a Catholic. It was forced on me, literally. I will ask difficult questions to get kicked out of the catequismo to go eat tacos across the street. So I never really learned anything there, but I caused a lot of chaos, and I still did my first communion anyway. um, I was around Jehovah's Witnesses, I was around Christians, I was around Muslims and Jewish people. I've been around a lot of people, and I just didn't understand why it didn't make sense. And it was until I started having my own experiences that I understood what they were trying to say. The problem is that nothing can be forced on anybody. Nothing, nothing. Like, not religion, not spirituality, not the red road, not an indigenous language. Nothing should be forced on anybody. Nothing, nothing. But when you feel that within your heart, when you're seeking this knowledge, let me tell you, when you do things from your heart, there is just something so mystic and so beautiful on how everything aligns and the doors open up on their own. And I mean that with all my heart. I haven't really had to go asking I've always find myself in these situations where I'm embraced and welcome, and we create opportunities for one another in community. So now that I'm walking this way and I have this responsibility, I hope that we can expose our people and have accessibility to these things for the next generations so they have their choice. They do